It began with a sting I didn't register, a prick beneath the skin I mistook for fatigue. I stood in the break room at Street. Jude's, the coffee machine's low growl, vibrating through the haze of a 14-hour shift. My hands still trembled from stitching up a junkie's gut, a knife fight gone sour, his blood pooling on the floor like spilled ink, dark and accusing. I'd lost him, his pulse flatlining under my gloves. But the charts didn't care about failures, only signatures. Dr. Claire Henshaw, our resident DEI evangelist, drifted in, her lavender perfume slicing through the antiseptic fog like a too-sweet scalpel. "Naomi," she said, her voice soft yet probing, "your handwriting's so elegant. Where'd you learn to write like that?" Her blonde bob brushed the edge of my chart as I scribbled vitals, dosages, the frantic loops of a life I couldn't save. The pen shook, but I kept it moving, ink bleeding into the paper. "Thanks," I muttered, flat and hollow, too exhausted to parse her tone. I'd fought tooth and nail to become a trauma surgeon here, in a hospital that gleamed like a fortress over a neighborhood once gritty and brown, now scrubbed clean with condos and overpriced juice bars. Her words were background noise, a hum I could ignore. "No, really," she pressed, stepping closer, her coffee breath warm against my cheek. "It's so precise, like calligraphy, almost artistic." Her eyes locked on my name at the top, Naomi Patel, MD, lingering there, dissecting it like a specimen under glass, a curiosity amid the Smiths and Johnsons that filled the staff roster. I should have caught it then, the barb hidden in her awe, the way her gaze turned my name into a question mark. But I was running on fumes, pride my only fuel, the crust of blood under my nails a badge. I wore too heavily. Later, I found the cup in my locker ceramic, chipped at the rim, Best Stock 2024 etched in dull gold, a leftover from some meaningless staff appreciation day. I gripped it hard, the chip biting into my palm, and sipped the cold, bitter sludge inside, telling myself I belonged here, that I'd earned this chipped relic of recognition. That night, in the dim hush of my apartment, the hospital's fluorescent buzz still ringing in my skull, I sat at the kitchen counter, the chipped cup beside me like a silent witness. I traced my name on a napkin, Naomi Patel, over and over, the ink smearing into a messy blur as my hand shook with something I couldn't name. The sting sank deep then, a slow bleed under the surface. She wasn't marveling at my skill. She was stunned I could hold a pen at all, as if my brown hands shouldn't know the shape of letters. Street Jude's was a beast of a place, cold steel and whispered secrets, its gears grinding beneath a fluorescent glare that never dimmed. Charts disappeared into the ether, orders smeared into illegible scrawls, but the system churned on relentlessly. Its tiled halls and antiseptic air, a sterile cocoon around the chaos of life and death. I thrived in that chaos. Trauma surgery was my pulse, my rhythm. A chest cracks open, you cut, you stitch, you walk away. No hesitation, no tears, just the steady beat of survival or its absence. So when my quarterly evaluation landed on my desk 3.7 out of 5, communication circled in red like a wound, I laughed, a jagged rasp swallowed by the locker room's metallic clang. Me, who'd roared commands through a bar fight triage, bodies piling up like broken toys, without missing a beat? The paper crumpled in my fist as I stormed down the hall to Claire's office, the chipped cup sloshing lukewarm coffee in my other hand, my chart flapping like a battle flag. The corridor reeked of bleach and bureaucracy, a sanitized shroud over the blood and sweat below. "Explain this," I said, slamming the eval onto her desk, the ink bleeding onto the polished wood like a fresh cut. She adjusted her glasses, her calm a mask of pity, as if I were a patient she'd sedate with platitudes. "It's the new HR software, Naomi," she said, her voice smooth as glass, unshaken by my heat. "Objective metrics. Your patient notes are impeccable, top tier, but the system flagged a readability issue." Readability? I gripped the cup tighter, its chipped edge digging into my palm until it stung. I've got the best survival rate in this hellhole. Who's reading my notes in AI with a vendetta? She tapped her tablet, numbers flickering to life like a heartbeat on a monitor. The software scans handwritten entries and assigns a legibility score. Yours came in below average. I stared, my pulse thumping in my ears. You called my handwriting elegant. Your exact word, Claire. Her smile tightened, a thread pulling taut beneath her serene facade. It's the digitization process. Names like yours longer, less common render in Garamond when scanned. The serifs complicate it, make it harder to parse. Names like mine? My voice stayed even, but my chest burned, a fire licking up my ribs. You mean Patel? It's just data, she said, her tone steady, lavender wafting from her like a shield. Nothing personal, Naomi. I wanted to smash the cup across her desk, let the shards scatter like my fraying control, the coffee staining her pristine reports. Instead, I leaned in, my voice a scalpel, sharp and precise. Run it again. Fix this now, she sighed, a patient martyr's breath. I'll escalate it to it. But the system's calibrated for efficiency, not for outliers like you. That night, in the flickering light of my apartment, the chipped cup sat heavy on the counter, best doc, a hollow boast staring back at me. I scratched my name on a scrap of paper, furious loops and slashes, until the pen tore through, leaving a jagged hole. The bite sank in, deep and unyielding. It wasn't my handwriting they questioned. It was me, my very existence in their clean, legible world. Ethan Carver caught me in the locker room, the sharp slam of metal doors echoing as I hunched over my laptop, hacking into the HR server with a pilfered login. He was a resident lanky, pale, with a smirk that danced on the edge of alliance and betrayal, his scrubs stained with the day's grind. The air hung thick with the mingled scents of sweat, steel, and the faint tang of antiseptic lingering on our skin. Patel, you look like you're breaking into Fort Knox, he said, tossing his scrubs into a bin with a dull thud, his voice cutting through the room's hum like a blade through tissue. Maybe I am, I snapped, my eyes locked on the glowing screen rows of names spilling out like a wound. Smith, 4.2, Johnson, 4.1, Lee, 4.0, Patel, 3.7, Jackson, 3.5, Adebayo, 3.4. The pattern bared its teeth, subtle but lethal anything beyond 6 letters, anything that didn't fit their neat Anglo grid, sank below the line, dragged down by invisible weights. He leaned in, his stubble brushing my shoulder, his breath warm and faintly sour with coffee. What's this haul? Evidence, I said, my voice a blade, cold and cutting. The system's got us by the throat. Look me, 3.7. Jamal, 3.5. Priya, 3.6. You, 4.2. Clean as a whistle. He whistled, a low, sharp sound that sliced the tension. Racist code? That's a hell of a claim. Not racist. Petty as hell. I shoved the screen toward him, Garamond serifs tangling Patel into a 2.5% legibility drop, a trivial snag that sank me. A font's got teeth, and it's biting us. His grin flashed, too eager, a spark of something I should have clocked. That's dark as hell. You taking this to Henshaw? Tried that already. She's got blinders on. I slammed the laptop shut, the sound a gunshot in the quiet, reverberating off the lockers. I need more ammo to make her see. He dangled the bait, his voice low and sly. Admin logs. I've got a back door in? Want it? His eyes flicked, a glint of ambition slipping through. Fellowships. Don't wait around, Patel. I should have seen the hook, the way his smirk tilted toward self-interest. But rage was my lens, and it blurred the edges. Get it, I said, my tone final. No room for doubt. We met at midnight in the cafeteria, the vending machines droning like a dying pulse, the air stale with grease, and the faint whiff of burnt coffee. He slid me a USB drive small, chipped at the edge like my cup, its weight heavy with unspoken truths. Every eval from the last year, he said, his voice a conspiratorial hush. You're right, it's a net, not a glitch. I plugged it in, and the numbers bled across the screen: brown names, black names, Asian names, all pulled under by decimals, a systematic drowning masked as neutrality. My hands shook, but I kept my voice cold, clinical. They didn't fuck up. They set this trap. He nodded, leaning closer, his shadow falling over the screen. What's your next play? Gotta move smart. I didn't answer, my mind drowning in the pattern's teeth, each digit a bite mark. The truth sank its jaws in deep. The algorithm wasn't broken. It was built to chew us up and spit us out. The USB burned a hole in my scrub's pocket as I scrubbed in for surgery, the OR's harsh lights glinting off steel trays, the sharp sting of iodine filling my nose and throat. Stab wound, 20-year-old gang kid, his chest a mess of red, and ruin my domain, my battlefield of blood and rhythm. I sliced through flesh with steady hands, clamped the artery as it pulsed against my fingers, my voice cutting through the silence like a lash. Suction, now. Tasha Jackson, black and green, fumbled the tube, her braids tucked tight under her cap, her wide eyes darting with panic beneath the glare. Faster, I barked, my tone hard as a slap across her face. He's bleeding out, move it! She flinched, her hands trembling as she adjusted, and a shard of guilt pricked me. I'd seen her charts, her sloppy scrawls of catheter and dose I'd sneered at silently, the same way they sneered at my elegant loops. The hypocrisy twisted in my gut, but I buried it under the steady beep of the monitor, the kid's life hanging on my thread. He made it, barely, his chest rising in shallow gasps as I sutured the last stitch. Ethan ambushed me post-op in the hallway, the fluorescent lights buzzing like a swarm overhead, casting shadows that danced on the tiled floor. Got something for you, he whispered, slipping me a crumpled printout shift schedules, the ink smudged from his sweaty grip. Check the overtime slots. Later in the break room, the air stale with the ghosts of burnt coffee and exhaustion, I sat with the chipped cup, its cold contents sloshing as I pored over the numbers. The pattern glared back, stark and ugly. Me, Jamal, Priya, our hours slashed to ribbons. Ethan, Rye Thompson stacked with extra shifts, their names glowing untouchable in the system's grid. Garamond wasn't just biting our evils. It was bleeding our time, our livelihoods, drop by decimal drop. I tracked Tasha down that night, found her mopping the floor, the slosh of bloody water loud in the cavernous silence, her rag dripping crimson onto the tiles. You ever notice they're cutting your shifts? I asked, my voice low, the USB a heavy secret against my thigh. She shrugged, her rag pausing mid-swipe, her eyes fixed on the stain she couldn't erase. I don't fight it. Gotta eat, Doc. Her voice was flat, resigned, a weight I didn't carry. You should fight, I bit out, sharper than I intended, my own frustration spilling over. They're bleeding us dry over nothing. Her gaze flicked up, worn and wary, meeting mine for a fleeting second. You're up there with a title and a cup. I'm down here with this mop. Ain't the same war. She was right, my chipped best doc was a badge she'd never wear. A privilege I'd ignored while judging her bent back. I turned away, locking the USB in my locker, its secrets pulling me deeper into the mire. Later, Jamal caught me by the exit, his locker slamming shut with a clang that echoed. They're killing my hours again, he said, his voice low, his hands restless. You seeing this too? Yeah, I said, my tone clipped, my mind racing. I'm digging into it. He nodded, but his eyes held a flicker of doubt, a question he didn't voice. The blood flowed beneath the surface. I was fighting for them, yes, but part of me still looked down on their cracked hands, their quieter defeats. Claire's office was a pastel prison, the lavender scent thick and cloying, the soft hum of her heater buzzing like a lie beneath the window. I stormed in, the USB clenched in one fist, the shift schedules flapping in the other, my boots leaving faint smudges on her pristine floor. Explain this, I said, slamming the papers onto her desk, the ink staining the wood like a wound that wouldn't clot. She didn't touch them, her hands folded primly in her lap, her face a mask of composed benevolence. Naomi, you're upset. Let's sit and… No, I cut her off, my finger jabbing at the grid, leaving a dent in the paper. Me, Jamal, Priya, our shift's gutted. Ethan, Rye? Loaded up. It's that damn font, isn't it? She sighed, a faint crack in her saintly veneer, her breath a whisper of strain. The system optimizes resources. If a name flags as less readable, it assumes a communication risk shifts, adjust accordingly. Her voice wavered just for a moment. I built this, Naomi. It's my stake here, my proof. Assumes? My laugh was a shard of glass, cutting through the lavender haze. A 2.5% legibility drop? You're starving us over squiggles on a screen? It's not personal, she said, her tone fraying at the edges like a worn suture. The AI's trained on standard patterns, fairness baked into the code. Fairness? I stepped closer, the chipped cup heavy in my pocket, its edge pressing into my hip. It's strangling us for breathing, Claire. She tapped her tablet, the screen flaring to life, numbers pulsing like a heartbeat on the edge of failure. Run my name, I ordered, my voice steel, unyielding. She hesitated, her fingers hovering, then typed, Naomi Patel, 3.7, Ethan Carver, 4.2, Tasha Jackson, 3.5. Garamond's serifs snarled around our names, tangling them into knots, while Carver slipped through, clean and untouched, a perfect specimen of the system's favor. Math's supposed to be blind, I said, my voice low and hot, simmering with fury. So why does this have eyes that see color and length? Her jaw clenched, a flicker of doubt breaking through her calm. It's a glitch in the parsing. We'll tweak it, I promise. Tweak it? I loomed over her desk, my shadow falling across her tablet. You fed it the data. You trained it to do this. It's not a glitch. It's your blueprint. Your hands on the throttle. She stood, meeting my height, her eyes hardening into flint, despite the tremor in her voice. You're chasing phantoms in numbers, Naomi. I built this to save us all, to keep this place running. To prove I belong too. I gripped the cup, its chipped edge drawing a thin line of blood against my palm, the lavender choking my lungs like a noose. The pulse of the system beat loud in my ears. She didn't see herself as its pawn. She thought she was its lifeblood, pumping order into chaos. Ethan lounged in the cafeteria when I found him, the vending machines buzzing like a dying pulse, their hum filling the stale air thick with grease and despair. I hissed what Claire had said, my voice low and tight, barely containing the storm inside. She's lying through her teeth, he growled, his knuckles popping like small bones snapping, his eyes glinting with a hunger I didn't trust. I dug deeper admin emails. They've known the font screws us for 6 months, sat on it like it's nothing. His grin flashed, sharp and sly. Fellowships don't wait around. Patel, you've got to play this right. Why bury it? My voice was ice, but my gut churned, a roiling mess of anger and dread. Money, he said, leaning in, his breath sour with coffee and something darker. Overtime bleeds their budget dry. Flag the messy names us, and guys like me scoop up the hours, the grants, the glory. I gripped the table, my nails gouging into the chipped wood, leaving crescent marks in the grain. You're eating this alive, aren't you? He shrugged, his eyes sharp and unapologetic. Not my design. I'm just legible, Patel. That's the game. I should have walked away then, left him to his scavenging. Instead, I stayed, drawn into the plot-hacked logs, stolen emails, a memo brewing to gut them where they stood. I even laughed when he mocked Claire's sanctimonious tone. It's just order. Naomi! A dry, rasping sound that echoed in the grease-thick air. A hollow note I didn't recognize as mine. Then Rye Thompson swaggered in, all frat boy bravado, his blonde hair gleaming under the lights. He tossed a chart at Tasha as she scrubbed tables nearby, the grease swirling under her rag like a storm. She couldn't clean. Hey, Tash, spell needle for us? He jeered, his grin wide and waiting. Show off those special skills you've got. The room froze, the air thickening with tension. Tasha's face went blank, her hands stilling on the rag, but Rye's grin held, expectant. Ethan smirked, a quiet accomplice. And me? I laughed a low, forced chuckle that scraped my throat, a sound I hated the moment it left me. It bought me Rye's nod, a wink of inclusion into their circle, a ticket I didn't want but took anyway. Tasha didn't look up, her rag moving again, scrubbing harder, the stains blooming into dark spirals across the table. Ethan nudged me later, his elbow sharp against my arm. You're in deep now, Patel. Leverage it while it's hot. That night, alone in my apartment, the chipped cup stared back from the counter, cold and accusing in my grip. I'd laughed to fit in, to slide into their orbit, and it worked. Rye's nod, Ethan's nudge, a fleeting sense of belonging. But Tasha's next shift cut 3. 5 flagged as unreadable stabbed me awake, a knife twisting in my ribs. I called Vikram, my fiancé, my voice fraying at the edges. I'm losing it, I said, the words breaking. This place, it's hollowing me out. Quit, Naomi, he pleaded, his voice soft and urgent through the static. You're enough without this fight. I can't, I roared, raw and ragged, the sound bouncing off the walls. They'll win if I do. His silence stretched, a widening chasm between us. The echo of that laugh rang in my skull. I wasn't just fighting the system anymore. I was starting to sound like it, to bend like it, to bleed like it. Ethan's eyes gleamed like polished steel in the stairwell, the concrete walls swallowing every sound as he handed me. The killing blow and email screenshot from Claire to the board. Font issue confirmed 6 months ago. No fix recommended cost-benefit favors current allocation. The ink of betrayal still seemed wet, the date a scar from half a year past. They knew, I said, my voice flat as a dead monitor. The USB, a live wire pulsing in my pocket, its chipped edge pressing against my thigh. He nodded, too eager, his grin a predator's flash. You've got them by the throat now, Patel. Rip it wide open. That night, I carved the memo with surgical precision, sharp, deadly, a thrust to the system's gut. Systemic bias in HR software disproportionately targets minority staff, I typed, my fingers steady on the keys, stitching in the logs, the schedules, the damning email. I sent it to Ethan, the chipped cup heavy in my hand as I sipped its bitter dregs. Tighten it up, I told him, my voice a command, no room for error. He texted back at 4 a.m., the screen lighting up my dark apartment. Perfected. Hits the board tomorrow. You're a titan, Patel. I smirked, the taste of defiance sour on my tongue, the cup's chip biting my palm as I gripped it tighter, a talisman of the fight ahead. The next day, the world split open. Claire dragged me into her office, the lavender thick and suffocating, her hands trembling as she clutched her tablet. Naomi, what the hell did you do? She demanded, her voice shaking, her blonde bob swaying with each furious word. I played dumb, my pulse steady despite the storm inside. What's the problem? She thrust the tablet at me. Her fingers white-knuckled. The memo was live on the hospital intranet, public to every staffer. But it wasn't my version. Names were scrubbed, numbers inflated beyond reason, and a new wound gaped. DEI negligence enabled known disparities. Claire's career bled out on the screen, her name tied to the failure. You leaked it, I said, the realization cutting slow and deep, a blade turning in my gut. No, she snapped, her voice splintering like cracked glass. But it's got your stench all over it, Naomi. I bolted from her office, my boots pounding the tiles, and found Ethan in the residence lounge, smirking over a steaming coffee, the buzz of laughter sharp in the air. You snake, I hissed, closing the distance until I could smell his smugness, the cologne he wore like armor. You rewrote it. You spread it. He grinned, unrepentant, his eyes glinting with victory. You wanted a war, Patel. I gave you one. Fellowship apps are due. This whistleblower gig looks damn good on paper. Jamal asked me to back him up yesterday, I said, my voice low, the weight of it sinking in. I told him to fight his own battle. Ethan shrugged, sipping his coffee. Your call, not mine. You're the one who swung. I gripped the chipped cup so hard my knuckles whitened, the edge drawing a thin line of blood across my palm. The blade had turned. I'd trusted the wrong hand, and it had slashed me open, leaving me to bleed while he climbed over my corpse. They didn't fire me. That would have been too loud, too messy with the memo gone viral, staff whispering in the bleach-soaked halls like ghosts passing judgment. Instead, they exiled me to a basement cubicle, a flickering pit of fluorescent tubes and dust-choked air, the walls stained with the faint memory of leaks, long ignored. No surgeries, just chart reviews. My scalpel replaced by a pen that felt foreign in my hand. Vikram's texts piled up on my cracked phone. Call me. I'm still here. But I let them sit unread, their pleas fading into the static of my silence. I ambushed Claire in the parking garage that evening, the exhaust fumes clawing at my throat, the dim light casting her shadow long and jagged across the concrete. Fix this, I demanded, my voice a shard of broken glass, cutting through the hum of idling engines. You built this monster, unmake it now. She laughed, a brittle, snapping sound that echoed off the walls, her bob swaying as she turned to face me. You think I'm the one pulling strings, Naomi? I'm just a thread in this tapestry. The board's strangling me now, thanks to your little chaos bomb. Then why defend it? My scream bounced off the concrete, raw and unrestrained, a howl of fury and betrayal. You saw the numbers, Claire. You knew what it was doing to us. She stepped closer, her eyes hardening into flint, though her voice cracked at the edges. Because it works. Turnovers down, budgets balance. The hospital breathes. You're the tear in the fabric, not the rule. She paused, her breath hitching. I bled for this system, it's my anchor here, my proof I belong. I hurled the chipped cup at the wall, the ceramic shattering into a spray of shards, best dock reduced to dust scattering across the oil-stained floor. That's what you think of me. She didn't flinch, her gaze steady. You're a surgeon, Naomi. Cut the wound, not the whole damn world. I stumbled home. The apartment, a gray Vikram's shoes gone from the entry, his scent fading from the air, his presence erased. I can't watch you sink like this, he'd said earlier, his voice breaking as he packed. This fight, it's not worth you. It's justice, I roared, but the door slammed shut behind him, the sound a final stitch in our unraveling. The next day, Tasha glared at me in the cafeteria, her shifts slashed again, her rag dripping crimson onto the tiles. You promised you'd fix it, she spat, her voice low and bitter, her eyes cutting deeper than any blade. I tried, I said, the words hollow, a flat line in my throat. That night, I scoured the USB alone, the whiskey burning my chest as I sat in the dark, the screen's glow casting shadows across my face. Li Wei's name flickered up 4, one unscathed by the font's teeth, his silence a shield. I saw him later in the hall, laughing with Rye, the whispers of his promotion thick in the air. The depth of the fall crushed me. The system didn't just shatter us, it lifted the ones who stayed quiet, who watched us bleed without a word. The board ambushed me in a conference room thick with cigar smoke and power, 3 suits glaring at me like I was prey to be gutted. The lead one, a vulture with a tie strangling his thick neck, shoved a folder across the table, the ink still wet, the paper trembling slightly in his grip. Settlement, he rasped, his voice scraping my nerves like gravel on glass. 6 figures. Non-disclosure agreement. Sign it, or we sue hacking, defamation, disruption. You'll be unemployable ash by the end. I opened the folder, the numbers roaring up at me a bribe in bold black and white. Enough to bury my loans, to buy a new life free of this place. My hands shook, but I locked them still. my nails digging into my palms. What about the software? He smirked, a crack splitting his stone face. Under review, he said, the lie dripping from his tongue like venom. Review? I leaned forward, my voice a blade, sharp and unyielding. You'll fudge a decimal, call it fixed, and keep carving us up. 48 hours, he said, his eyes flat and dead, no trace of doubt. Sign, or we bury you. I snatched the folder and stormed out, my boots pounding the polished floor, the air heavy with the weight of their threat. Ethan caught me in the hallway, laughing with Rye, his new fellowship badge glinting under the lights like a trophy won on my blood. Rough luck, Patel, he taunted, stepping close enough for me to smell his cologne. Thick and victorious. You swung big, huh? You sold me out, I hissed, jabbing a finger into his chest, feeling the thud of his heartbeat beneath it. For that shiny little pin, he grinned unshaken. You burned, Naomi. I flew. That's how it works. I retreated to the basement cubicle, flickering lights, the air rancid with bleach, and regret my phone lighting up with Vikram's final plea. I'm done begging you to come back. Tasha's text followed. Shift's gone again. You're a liar. I threw the phone against the wall, the screen shattering into a spiderweb of cracks, the sound a brief release. By nightfall, Vikram's key was gone from the hook he'd walked out for good, his absence a fresh wound. Li Wei passed me outside later, his new badge, attending resident, shining in the dim light of the parking lot. You saw it all, I said, my voice raw, breaking against the cold night air. Why didn't you fight with me? He paused, his gaze icy and serene. I don't burn bridges, Naomi. You built a pyre and lit it yourself. I signed the settlement at 3 a.m., alone in my kitchen, the ink bleeding into the page as whiskey pooled on the counter, my hand shaking with every stroke. The hospital sent a new cup with the check street. Jude's strong, pristine, unblemished, a gag order in ceramic form. The silence bit deep, its teeth sinking into my marrow. It wasn't freedom I'd bought. It was surrender, dressed up with a paycheck and a hollow trophy. The money hit my account at dawn, a quiet ping, a flat line in the silence of my apartment. 6 figures glowing cold and sterile on the screen. The NDA was a noose around my throat. No interviews, no lawsuits, no whispers about Garamond's jagged teeth or the system that wielded them. They called it freedom, a clean break. To me, it felt like fading into a void, my voice snuffed out by a signature. I cleared out my locker that morning, the halls of street, Jude's buzzing with rumors I couldn't hear, the antiseptic sting fading from my senses like a memory I'd already half lost. Tasha mopped past me, her movements slow and deliberate, her rag tracing circles in the blood-streaked floor, her eyes blank as a chart, with no pulse. Sorry, I tried to say, my voice a fragile thread, but she turned away, the rag dripping red onto the tiles, her silence louder than any accusation. Jamal caught me at the exit, his hands restless, his eval still stuck at 3.5, his nights endless. You're out? He asked, his voice steady but his eyes searching, a flicker of something hope, maybe dying as he spoke. Yeah, I said, cold as a diagnosis, the weight of the settlement heavy in my mind. Paid off. He nodded, slow and deliberate. So you got yours then. Good for you. Did I? The words choked me, a laugh that wouldn't break free, stuck in my throat like a stone. He didn't know my laugh at Tasha's expense. My deal with Ethan's betrayal, my name scrawled on the gag order that silenced me. He didn't see the void I'd stepped into. Home was a husk when I got there, Vikram's books gone from the shelves, his coat missing from the rack, his note shredded in my fist. Call me if you're still Naomi. I clawed it from the trash, smoothed it out on the counter, but it was too late, his number unanswered, his presence a ghost I couldn't summon back. That night, I saw Li Wei on the local news, street. Jude's rising star, his smile polished, his words smooth as he spoke of collaboration and resilience. Earlier in the hall, he'd looked at me, his voice a shard. "You shouted, Naomi." I listened. "That's why I'm here." His mug gleamed on the broadcast. No chips, no scars, a testament to his quiet climb over my wreckage. I drank alone, the whiskey scouring my throat where pride had once burned. The new cup Street Jude strong, sitting untouched on the counter. Its perfection, a mockery. The settlement check lay framed on my desk, a prize I couldn't bring myself to cash, a trophy of my defeat. The void edged closer, its silence deafening. I hadn't won anything. I'd fed the system my voice, and it had crowned another's quiet ascent with the scraps of my fight. The new cup Street. Jude Strong sat on my windowsill, its pristine surface catching the weak March light, a trophy I hadn't bled for, hadn't earned. 4 weeks had passed since I'd resigned, the NDA's script etching my exit into a lie of mutual agreement. The money sat in my account, untouched, not a dime spent on loans, not a drop on the whiskey. I'd spilled across the counter, drowning Vikram's note until the ink blurred into a legible mush. I walked the old neighborhood that afternoon, the gentrified scars of street, Jude's shadowcraft beer joints and boutique gyms where corner stores and laundromats once stood, their ghosts buried under sleek facades. A flyer flapped on a rusted pole. Staff rally, fair pay now, Tasha's name in fine print as a co-organizer, a spark of resistance I'd lost the right to claim. My boots stuck to the pavement, rooted by the weight of what I couldn't say. I sold you out? Tasha, but keep burning anyway, I called Ethan, my voice a shard cutting through the line. You still there? Fellowship's locked in, he crowed, his smugness thick even through the phone. Reformer cred looks damn good. You coming back? Did they fix it? I pressed, my tone hard, unyielding. A beat of silence, then a shrug I could hear. Tweaked something. Scores ticked up a hair. Why you miss it? No, I said, and cut the line, the word sharp, maybe a lie I couldn't admit. That night, Claire's LinkedIn profile glowed on my screen. New job. Equity systems advisor at some nonprofit. Her bio polished with talk of lessons learned and systemic growth. Li Wei's followed department head now, his mug pristine in the profile pic. No chips, no fight. The rally loomed the next day. Jamal texted me the time. A quiet come if you can. But I didn't reply, my fingers hovering over the keys before falling still. I filled the new cup with water, the taste sharp and clean against my tongue, the city lights pulsing outside my window like a heartbeat. I couldn't match. The USB? I'd smashed it with the old chipped cup weeks ago, both reduced to fragments in a dumpster behind the building, their secrets buried with my voice. The settlement check sat uncashed on my desk, a line I'd crossed but couldn't claim, its edges yellowing in the dim light. Tasha might carve out something real at that rally, might win a sliver of what I'd lost, but I'd never know, never see it. I'd excised myself from the story, cut the thread that tied me to the fight. The line faded into shadow. It wasn't over. Not for them. It just wasn't mine anymore.